It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia, and isolation that I remember from those final years with her.
So Prince William and Catherine just revealed the one letter Buckingham Palace could never afford to have read aloud. It was written by Diana, hidden for nearly 3 decades, and addressed not to William, not to Harry, but to Princess Anne. 5 minutes after William lifted the final page, Catherine was fighting tears. Anne had covered her face, and one sentence about Camilla had already begun tearing through the royal household. The letter never used Camilla's name. That was what made it so dangerous. Diana wrote about a woman who would seek acceptance by rewriting the family rather than joining it. She warned that this woman would slowly push Diana's memory aside, weaken the position of her sons, and reach toward the household of the future king. William read those words once. Then again, Catherine looked across the room at Anne. Anne did not ask who Diana meant. Her expression said she already knew. But that was not the line that broke her. The words that finally brought Anne to tears came on a page she had never seen before. Diana had left a direct instruction about the woman William would one day choose, a woman Diana knew might face the same loneliness, pressure, and resistance that had followed her through palace corridors. By the time Catherine reached that sentence, the story was no longer only about Camilla. It was about a promise Anne had unknowingly failed to complete. Hours earlier, at exactly 7:42 on Thursday morning, Charles Spencer had been sitting inside the library at Althorpe House in Northamptonshire. The room was quiet, filled with old leather books, family portraits, and the pale morning light falling across a heavy writing desk. Spencer was cataloguing private papers ahead of an approaching memorial anniversary for Diana. It should have been ordinary archival work. One box, one record, one signature at a time. Then an archivist carried in a dark leather case that had been found behind a row of sealed estate ledgers. It carried no palace crest and no modern inventory tag, only a faded Spencer reference number and a handwritten warning stating that the contents were not to be disturbed unless a future family crisis made silence more dangerous than disclosure. Spencer cleared the room. The doors closed, the case was opened. Inside lay a cream envelope wrapped in thin tissue, its wax seal untouched. Diana's handwriting crossed the front with the same rising slant seen in her private correspondence. There was no title, no formal wording, and no explanation. Just one name written with unusual firmness. Anne. Royal Watchers, if you truly believe William and Catherine should be protected from anyone trying to erase Diana's place in their family, do not sit quietly through this revelation. Subscribe, press like, and share this story with someone who still respects Diana's legacy. Then answer one simple question in the comments. Should Anne reveal everything she knows about Camilla, yes or no? Beneath Anne's name, Diana had written the condition for opening the envelope. It was to remain sealed unless palace tension threatened her sons, the women they married, or the grandchildren she might never meet. Spencer read the instruction twice. The family solicitor leaned closer. Suddenly the discovery was no longer an old letter. It was a warning designed for William's life now. At 8:26, the solicitor placed the envelope beneath a document lamp and found a second impression under Diana's instruction, as though another page had once rested against it. The mark contained 3 words that could barely be seen without magnification. Protect his wife. Spencer stared at them, then ordered every phone in the library switched off. The seal was photographed before anyone touched it. The ink, paper, storage record, and handwriting were checked against verified documents held inside the Spencer archive. Several lines carried deep pressure marks, showing that Diana had rewritten parts of the message more than once. She had chosen her language carefully. This was not a hurried note created in anger. It had been prepared to survive her. Spencer did not call Buckingham Palace. He called William at Adelaide Cottage. He told him that a sealed message from Diana had been found, that Anne's name was on the front, and that the contents concerned William's future household. William asked whether it was genuine. Spencer said there was no doubt. Then William asked the question Spencer had been avoiding. What did she write about Catherine? Spencer refused to answer over the telephone. Before William and Catherine left for Althorpe, another detail surfaced. Beneath the envelope was an older catalogue card recording that Diana had prepared 2 copies of the same letter. One had remained hidden with the Spencer papers, the other had been delivered privately to Anne years earlier. But beside that entry, written in a different hand, was a final note. Anne's copy ended before the last page, and Diana had made sure of it. By the time William and Catherine left Adelaide Cottage, the cream envelope had already been moved from the main library at Althorpe into a smaller private room overlooking the east lawn. Charles Spencer wanted no unnecessary staff nearby, no open doors, no mobile phones on the table, only the letter, the archivist, the family solicitor, and the question no one had yet been willing to ask aloud. Why had Diana written to Anne? The drive from Windsor passed in near silence. William kept returning to Spencer's final warning that the message concerned his future household. Catherine watched the countryside move beyond the glass, but her thoughts remained fixed on the 3 words impressed beneath the paper. Protect his wife, nothing more. Yet those words made the journey feel less like a visit to an archive and more like an appointment Diana had arranged decades earlier. At Althorpe, Spencer met them away from the main entrance. There were no photographers, no household line, no formal welcome. He led them through a side corridor and into the private room where the envelope rested beneath a document lamp. William stopped before reaching the table. For several seconds, he simply stared at his mother's handwriting. The seal remained intact. The slanted letters appeared calm at first glance, but the pressure in the ink suggested something else. Some strokes were dark and deliberate. Others faded midway, as though Diana had paused, reconsidered, then forced herself to continue. Catherine noticed a faint crease across the lower corner. The envelope had been handled carefully, but not casually. Spencer explained that the paper matched stationery Diana had used during the final year of her life. The ink was consistent with verified correspondence. The envelope had been stored inside a case, listed in an old Spencer catalogue, though its contents had never been described. Nothing in the records suggested anyone had opened it after Diana sealed it. William asked for one final comparison. The archivist placed a verified note beside the envelope. The loops, spacing, downward pressure, and unusual shape of the capital A aligned. So did the way Diana crossed certain letters with a quick rising stroke. The examination did not remove the emotion from the room. It made it heavier. This was her hand. This was her hand. Then Spencer revealed the second catalogue entry. Diana had prepared 2 copies. One remained at Althorpe. The other had been sent to Anne through a private delivery route that avoided palace offices completely. No official registry, no central correspondence desk, no courtier standing between Diana and the woman she had chosen. That detail changed William's expression. Diana had not trusted the system to carry the message. At 11:58, the solicitor carefully loosened the wax so the envelope could be opened without damaging the paper. The sound was almost nothing. A faint lift, a soft release. Everyone heard it. Inside were 4 sheets. The first began without ceremony. Diana acknowledged that the public had often been encouraged to see her and Anne as opposites. One emotional, one severe, one modern, one traditional, but those labels, she wrote, had served a purpose. People rarely watched an alliance they did not believe existed. Catherine looked up. The letter continued. Diana wrote that Anne understood duty without surrendering judgment. She understood how affection could disappear beneath procedure, how concern could be renamed interference, and how silence could be demanded in the name of stability. Diana did not flatter her. She trusted her. William read more slowly. Diana feared that after she was gone, her sons would be surrounded by people who believed control was the same as protection. She worried that William, as the future king, would be praised for obedience while being quietly separated from anyone who reminded him that he was also a son, a brother, and one day a husband. Then the language shifted. The next paragraph warned that memory itself could be used as a weapon. Diana wrote that someone might seek acceptance by changing the family's emotional record. Her work would be reduced. Her place beside her sons would be softened. Her influence would be treated as an inconvenient chapter the monarchy had outgrown. The room went still. Catherine followed the next line with her finger. Diana described a woman who would seek legitimacy not by joining the family as it was, but by rewriting it until the past no longer threatened her place in the present. William stopped reading. Catherine looked toward Spencer, then back at the page. The question had been waiting inside that room from the moment the seal broke. Was Diana writing about Camilla? No one answered. Because the second page had just revealed something worse. It contained a private instruction, written years before Catherine entered William's life, warning Anne exactly when she would have to act alone. The second page changed the shape of the entire morning. Diana had not written to Anne because she feared one argument, one headline, or one uncomfortable dinner inside the palace. She had written because she believed pressure could be applied slowly, almost invisibly, until the person being controlled began mistaking obedience for peace. Anne understood that language. For years, the public had been shown two women who seemed to share nothing. Diana moved through crowds with warmth. Anne preferred order, distance, and work requiring no applause. Newspapers turned those differences into rivalry, because rivalry was easier to sell than trust. The letter told a different story. Diana wrote that Anne had once warned her never to confuse palace approval with loyalty. Approval could vanish overnight. Loyalty was proved when the doors closed, and there was nothing to gain from standing beside someone under pressure. That sentence made William lower the page. He remembered Anne arriving at Windsor during school holidays without ceremony. She never asked him to speak about grief. She walked beside him, talked about ordinary things, and gave him the feeling that no performance was required. Until that moment, he had never connected those visits to Diana. Catherine did. She saw the pattern immediately. Anne had not been distant after Diana's death. She had been careful. Her visits were quiet enough to escape headlines and regular enough to create stability. Diana had asked for a barrier around her sons, and Anne had built one. Then Spencer reached the paragraph that altered the mood. Diana warned that the greatest danger would not arrive as an open attack. It would appear polite, reasonable, helpful. A future figure might speak of unity while deciding which memories were convenient, which charities deserved attention, and which relationships should be pushed from the center. There was no accusation on the page. There was recognition. The description pointed toward a woman seeking public acceptance, then trying to secure it by making Diana seem less important to the monarchy's future. Not erased in one dramatic act, reduced slowly. One portrait moved, one tribute shortened, one anniversary softened. One son encouraged to stop looking backward. Catherine read the passage twice. William did not need to ask why. The letter had been written before Camilla married Charles, before she became queen, and before Catherine entered royal life. Yet Diana's warning appeared to describe a conflict that would emerge decades later. That was the first shock. The second came when Spencer telephoned Gatcombe Park. Anne answered through her private office. Spencer explained that the Althorpe copy had been opened in William and Catherine's presence and contained 4 sheets. Silence followed. Not confusion, not disbelief. Recognition. Anne asked him to repeat the number. 4 sheets. Her response came slowly. The copy delivered to her years earlier had contained only 3. The room at Althorpe became completely still. Anne admitted that she had known about Diana's warning since the late 1990s. The envelope had reached Gatcombe outside the palace correspondence system. It was delivered privately, placed into her hands, and stored in a secure cabinet inside her study. She had read it once, then again. Then she locked it away. Anne believed Diana wanted her to protect William and Harry from becoming emotionally isolated inside the institution.
I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
She understood the request as a private duty, not a public declaration. Revealing the letter during the boys' childhood would have created another storm around them. So she chose silence and carried out the instruction quietly. But Anne had never seen a 4th page. Spencer asked whether the third sheet ended cleanly. Anne said it did. Diana's signature appeared at the bottom, followed by a short postscript. There was no missing sentence, no broken paragraph, and no visible sign anything had been removed. That meant Diana had prepared two versions deliberately. One gave Anne enough information to act. The other preserved something Anne was not yet meant to know. William turned toward the final sheet, still resting face down beneath Spencer's hand. The paper was thinner than the others and had been folded separately. Along the top edge, Diana had written 5 words. For the woman he chooses. Catherine stopped breathing for a moment. Anne remained on the telephone as Spencer described the inscription. Her voice, controlled until then, changed. She asked him not to read the page aloud. Not yet. She wanted to see the handwriting herself and compare it with the copy she had protected for decades. Then she said something that unsettled everyone. Diana had once told her that the hardest promise would not concern the boys while they were young. It would concern William when he finally built a family of his own. Anne had assumed Diana meant children. She had been wrong. Within minutes, arrangements were made for Anne to travel to Althorpe with her original copy. William kept his eyes on the unopened final sheet. Catherine remained beside him, one hand resting near the table without touching the paper. The warning about Camilla had brought them there, but the page Diana hid from Anne was about Catherine. Anne arrived at Althorpe after 3:30, carrying a black document case. There was no motorcade and no press officer. She stepped from the car, gave Spencer one nod, and walked toward the library. Her face revealed nothing. That changed when she saw the 4th sheet. The room had been prepared before her arrival. Diana's Althorpe copy rested beneath the document lamp. Beside it was an empty space for the letter Anne had guarded at Gatcombe Park for nearly 3 decades. William stood near the window. Catherine remained at the table. Spencer closed the door, and the solicitor switched off the mobile phone. Anne placed her case down and entered the combination herself. Inside was a pale blue envelope wrapped in cotton. The edges had softened with age, but the paper was clean. Diana's handwriting crossed the front. It was the same name, the same pressure, the same deliberate lack of a royal title. Anne. William saw proof that his aunt had carried part of his mother's warning all along. The 2 envelopes were placed side by side. The solicitor compared the seals, the fold marks, and the ink smudge beneath the letter of Anne's name. They matched. So did the opening pages, every correction, every line break, every word Diana had pressed into the paper. Then the difference appeared. Anne's 3rd page ended with Diana's signature and a short postscript asking her to remain close to the boys if palace life became too cold around them. The Althorpe version continued. A separate sheet had been folded behind the signature, hidden so neatly that anyone reading Anne's copy would have believed the message was complete. It had been done on purpose. Anne did not defend herself. She explained that after reading Diana's message, she had made one decision. William and Harry would never be turned into public projects in her presence. She would give them somewhere quiet to stand, somewhere they were not expected to speak, smile, or behave like symbols. That was why she appeared during school breaks without photographers. That was why she walked with them instead of questioning them. That was why she never told them the reason. William remembered those afternoons differently now. Anne arriving in a practical coat, Anne refusing to discuss headlines, Anne changing the subject whenever an adult tried to turn grief into a formal conversation. At the time, he thought she disliked emotion. Now he understood that she had been protecting it. Catherine watched Anne. Beneath the posture was something closer to fear. Not fear of what Diana had written about Camilla. Fear of what she had written about William's future wife. Spencer lifted the 4th sheet. Along the top, Diana had written, "For the woman he chooses." Anne moved closer. The first lines were not a warning against Catherine. They were a warning for her. Diana wrote that William might one day choose a woman whose calmness would be mistaken for weakness. A woman expected to smile while decisions were made around her. A woman praised for dignity until that dignity became an excuse to leave her unsupported. Catherine lowered her eyes. Diana had never met her, yet the words seemed to understand the position she would occupy years later.
Because the future of our children is something we all build together, through the actions each and every one of us takes every day.
The scrutiny, the comparisons, the pressure to remain composed even when the room around her was shifting. Then came the instruction. Stand beside the woman William chooses. She may one day face what I could not survive alone. Anne read it once. Then again. Her hand tightened against the desk. For years, she had believed Diana's request ended with William and Harry. She had protected the boys because that was the duty placed before her. But the fourth page revealed a second responsibility, one Diana had hidden until the family reached the moment she feared. Protect Catherine. The silence became unbearable. And royal watchers, this is where staying quiet becomes a choice. If Catherine deserves the protection Diana wanted for her, then subscribe, press like, and share this story now. Then answer one simple question in the comments. Should Anne stand publicly beside Catherine against Camilla? Yes or no? Anne turned toward Catherine, but no words came. Her eyes had filled. The woman known for restraint was struggling to hold herself together, not because Diana had predicted Camilla's rise, but because Diana had trusted her with a promise she never knew existed. Catherine reached for her hand. Anne finally spoke. She said Diana had once told her that William would need one person inside the family who would protect his home rather than the institutions surrounding it. Anne had assumed that meant his childhood. She now understood Diana had been speaking about his marriage. William looked away. The final paragraph remained unread. Diana had added a sign that would tell Anne when the time had come to act. It would happen when someone tried to weaken Diana's memory in order to influence William's household. Anne read the line. Her composure broke. Then she looked at William and said the words that changed the room. That moment has already come. Anne did not explain. She moved away from the desk and stood beside the window, as though the answer might be easier to give with her back turned. William waited. Catherine did not press her. Spencer remained beside Diana's letter. When Anne spoke, her voice was quieter. The signs had appeared slowly. There had been discussions about which photographs should be used at memorial events. Questions about how often Diana's name should appear beside William's work. Suggestions that the monarchy needed to stop looking backward. None of it had seemed large enough to challenge. That was how influence worked. It rarely arrived with one demand. It entered through small decisions that looked harmless until the pattern became impossible to ignore. Anne described conversations in which Diana's charitable legacy had been treated as something emotional rather than foundational. Certain advisors wanted public attention moved toward the royal household. Others argued that William should separate his future from his mother's memory so the monarchy could appear settled. Then Camilla's name entered the room. Not as an accusation, as a conclusion. Anne believed Diana had feared a future in which Camilla's acceptance depended on making Diana less visible. Not by openly attacking her. That would have caused outrage. The method would be quieter. Diana's influence would be shortened in speeches, softened in official language, and gradually removed from the emotional center of William's family. William's expression hardened. Catherine remained still. Anne then admitted something she had never said aloud. During palace discussions, she had watched Catherine's position become part of the same struggle. Catherine was praised when she remained silent, but questioned whenever her choices reflected Diana's style of public service. Her closeness to ordinary families, her focus on children, and the way crowds responded to her had invited comparisons no one could control. The comparisons created pressure, and pressure created fear. Anne had believed Catherine's composure meant she was managing it. Diana's final page forced her to see the danger in that assumption. Calmness could hide exhaustion. Duty could conceal isolation. A woman could appear steady while carrying far more than anyone around her understood. That realization broke through Anne's restraint. She apologized to Catherine. The words came unevenly, carrying years of regret. Anne said she had stood beside William when he was young, yet failed to recognize when the same protection should have extended to his wife. Diana had trusted her to notice. Anne feared she had noticed too late. Catherine took both of Anne's hands. She told her that silence had not made her disloyal. The quiet visits, the steady presence, and the refusal to turn William's grief into palace theatre had fulfilled part of Diana's request. Catherine did not blame her for a page she had never received. William stepped closer. He told Anne that some of the safest moments of his childhood came from the ordinary hours she gave him. No speeches, no cameras, no attempt to tell him how he should feel. She had protected him before he understood he needed protection. Anne lowered her head. Then the telephone rang. Spencer's solicitor answered and looked toward William. The call had come from the Prince of Wales's private office. Palace advisors had learned that the Althorpe letter was being examined. They wanted William on a secure line before any copy, statement, or reference to the contents reached the public. The request sounded calm. The urgency beneath it did not. Royal Watchers, if Catherine should never be left to face palace pressure alone, this is the moment to prove it. Subscribe, press like, and share this story. Then write one name in the comments: Catherine or Camilla. William took the call in the adjoining room. The palace proposal was ready. A short statement would acknowledge private family correspondence while insisting it carried no relevance to present relationships. Diana's words would be described as belonging to another era. No passages would be released. No names would be discussed. William listened without interrupting. Then he refused. He would not allow his mother's warning to be reduced to an old misunderstanding. He would not approve language suggesting the danger had passed when the final page described Catherine's position with such precision. Most of all, he would not let advisors decide which part of Diana's memory the public could see. The voice on the other end asked whether he understood what would happen if people connected the warning to Camilla. William's answer was immediate. Diana had chosen not to write a name. The palace had no right to add one, but it also had no right to erase the description. When he returned to the library, Catherine could see the decision had been made. William placed the final page beside Diana's envelope and looked toward his wife. They would reveal the letter together. The decision moved faster than the palace expected. Within 40 minutes, a recording room at Althorpe had been prepared. No press conference, no crowd of reporters, no palace backdrop. Just William, Catherine, the cream envelope, and the final page resting between them. William began with the discovery. He explained that a letter written by Diana had been found among Spencer papers and examined alongside a copy preserved by Princess Anne. His tone remained steady, but his hands did not leave the page. He made it clear. The letter belonged to his mother's personal history, and no office would decide which parts of that history were convenient enough to remember. Catherine spoke next. She did not mention Camilla. She did not need to. Instead, she read Diana's warning about a woman who might enter royal life and discover that composure could become a trap. The calmer she appeared, the more people might assume she required no protection. The more faithfully she served, the easier it might become for others to make decisions around her and call it duty. Then Catherine read the sentence Diana had written for Anne. Stand beside the woman William chooses. She may one day face what I could not survive alone. Her voice tightened on the words. William reached across and placed his hand over hers. Neither continued. The silence was left in the recording. No cut, no correction, no attempt to polish away the emotion. That silence said enough. When William resumed, he refused to turn the letter into a direct accusation. Diana had named no one, and he would not place words into her handwriting. But he also refused to pretend the warning had no meaning now. No person, household, or royal office, he said, should build acceptance by diminishing Diana's work, weakening her bond with her sons, or interfering with the family William and Catherine had built. Inside the palace communications office, the reaction was immediate. The prepared neutral statement was abandoned. Advisors began calling private secretaries across 3 royal households, trying to determine whether Anne would support William publicly. The answer arrived before they were ready. Anne entered the recording room. She sat beside Catherine, not William. Her eyes were still red, but her posture had returned. She explained that Diana had trusted her with the protection of William and Harry, and that she had tried to honor that promise privately. What she had not known was that Diana's request extended to Catherine. Anne then turned quietly toward her. She did not offer a formal palace phrase, she offered a promise. Catherine would not stand alone.
Having William by my side is a great source of comfort and reassurance too, as is the love, support and kindness that has been shown by so many of you.
For viewers who have always believed Catherine deserves loyalty, not quiet abandonment, this is not the moment to watch and disappear. Subscribe, press like, and share this video with every royal watcher who still respects Diana. Then answer with one word in the comments: Anne or Camilla. The recording was released shortly after 6:40. Within minutes, the sentence about rewriting the family spread across television panels, social media, and newsrooms. Some focused on Camilla, others focused on Anne's silence. But the strongest response centered on Catherine, because Diana's final instruction had turned a letter from the past into a protection order for the future queen. William did not celebrate the reaction. He returned the pages to the table and watched Spencer place them inside a protective sleeve. The letter would remain within the family archive, but high-resolution copies would be preserved, so no later statement could soften its wording or remove the fourth sheet. Anne stayed behind after the recording ended. She stood with Catherine near the window where the afternoon light had begun to fade. Nothing more needed to be said. Diana had asked Anne to stand beside the woman William chose. At last, she was doing it. The letter had appeared to be a warning about Camilla. In the end, it revealed something deeper. Diana had not only feared the person who might rewrite her place in the family, she had anticipated the pressure that could one day surround Catherine, and she had chosen Anne as the one royal figure strong enough to step between Catherine and that pressure. But one question remained. Why had Diana hidden the final page from Anne herself? The answer may already be inside a second sealed envelope discovered beneath the same Althorpe catalogue card. And in the next video, William opens it to find a handwritten date, the name of a palace advisor, and one instruction concerning Prince George that Catherine was never meant to see. That is the next revelation. And missing it could mean missing the reason Diana created two letters in the first place.